What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and it's Top 10 Thursday. You know, recently I've been thinking about the fact that sometimes the best games end up utterly flopping. We kind of assume that if something is fun to play and really interesting, it'll be flying off store shelves, but that's not really the case. Sometimes the games that end up even winning Game of the Year barely sell any copies at all. So this week, we're taking a special look at that. Let's look at the games that failed despite the fact that they were so amazing on my picks of the top 10 great games that no one played. Number 10. Eternal Darkness. There is perhaps no genre of gaming that pushes the boundaries of design further than survival horror. Making a player scared is a really difficult art because it requires that you keep them in a constant state of fear while also finding a way to keep them entertained so they don't just quit. Eternal Darkness handled this flawlessly with its unique sanity system. As our set of characters work their way through these monster-filled environments, you have to not only worry about your health and ammo, but also your mind. Seeing some truly messed up stuff will actually crack your brain, causing you to hallucinate, making it seem like the TV is changing channels or that you're walking on the ceiling. These inventive mechanics built into a solid survival horror game was so clever, and yet that doesn't exactly equal good sales. This project basically bombed, which is a real shame since this is one title that I thought should have been a huge hit for the Gamecube. Number 9. Psychonauts. It's always pretty disappointing to see an adventure that manages to be super bold and interesting but get almost no attention. In the modern day, Psychonauts is remembered as this classic platformer with goofy jokes and quirky art. However, when it first released, it was completely overlooked since those weren't exactly popular qualities at the time. You gotta remember, this was during the era of Halo and every studio competing to make huge shooters. A tiny company like Double Fine coming up with a cute little game about kids at a psychic summer camp, it was pretty hard to sell. To be honest, I didn't even play this game myself until 2014 when I stumbled on a copy for $1, but I was instantly hooked. The story is so extremely silly, the powers we unlock are awesome, and the world is unlike anything else I've ever seen before. While I'm sad that this title was basically a failure, I'm glad that eventually we will get a Psychonauts 2. Number 8. Asura's Wrath. Let me start this entry by saying that calling this a game is sort of a stretch, and yet I don't consider that a negative. Asura's Wrath is roughly an interactive cutscene with insane fighting mixed in, and it's incredibly addictive because of it. There's such a wonderful simplicity to tapping a few buttons to power punch away millions of enemies, level up, and transform into a more crazy god. Just as a quick example of how bonkers this plot is, here's our hero and a bad guy battling on the moon when suddenly the villain gets out a sword that can stretch to infinite lengths. Now he's using it to try and stab Asura so hard that he'll fly back to Earth and burn up in the atmosphere. But as you can see, that doesn't work because now they're fighting and people are getting their arms ripped off and everything. This game is insanity. Every chapter of this game is epic to this standard, and for that reason, I wish more gamers had picked it up, but they just didn't. Number 7. Phantom Dust. I'm a big believer in the idea that certain things are destined for greatness. A game like Final Fantasy VII is so perfect that it was going to go on and become a massive success even if they didn't advertise it all over the place. Phantom Dust is a project that I fully thought would explode and take over the original Xbox, but it never caught on. The combination of mysterious story, gothic characters, and standout gameplay seemed like the ultimate combo to grab fan attention. However, it never did, and I still wonder why. I suppose it's the fact that at its core, Phantom Dust is essentially a card game. While there are flashy graphics and sweet destructible maps, these moments are sandwiched between deck building, but I actually found these slower parts made the overall experience a lot more interesting. It seems that others didn't agree with me though, since it moved hardly 100,000 units, making it a very, very painful flop. Number 6. Planescape Torment. RPGs come in many shapes and sizes, from grand turn-based quests to more straightforward isometric titles like this one. Planescape Torment is aged pretty well for a game that was released 2 decades ago, and that's due to the very fantastic writing. This almost plays like a choose-your-own-adventure book, except that it has thousands of different paths for us to explore. We take on the role of a person who's got a weird magic power that each time he dies, he lays on the ground for a bit only to wake up later, but usually without his memories. The game opens after one of his recent deaths, and this time he has no idea who he is. It's our job to wander around, meeting villagers, making friends, and probably punching tons of creatures to bits in our journey to try and regain your past. I love Planescape for its ability to keep you pushing forward even while terribly confused as to what's going on. The lore, backstory, and branching conversations are so deep it's possible to spend hundreds of hours playing this, but regrettably few actually did. Number 5. Okami. Here's a random fun fact, this game remains the only title ever that has won over 50 Game of the Year awards while hardly selling at all. Critics went absolutely nuts for this project when it came out, while average players left it sitting on store shelves. Unfortunately, Okami is sort of a concept that's hard to describe on the back of a box. We play as the goddess of sun and life, Amaterasu, a being that often takes the form of a small white wolf. Don't let that tiny size fool you into thinking she's weak though, because she is ready to save the land by using her spells to cut apart enemies, solve puzzles, or just annoy people in town. At its base, Okami almost plays like a long-lost Zelda game, and that's really great. Diving into this colorful landscape and getting into trouble almost seems like we're getting a very different slice of Hyrule. Recently, this title got ported over to the PS4, Xbox One, and PC, so at this point, you have no excuse not to pick up the magical paintbrush of Okami and see the adventure for yourself. Number 4. Grand Theft Auto Chinatown Wars. It's hard to imagine a GTA game ever not doing well, but this is actually one that was strangely avoided, which is crazy to me since it is so good. Seriously, this is one of my favorite games in this already fantastic series. The entire story takes place within a civil war going down in Chinatown, with our hero stuck in the very middle of the action. His father was the leader of the Chinese mafia, so when he randomly turns up dead, it's your assigned task to find out who did it and why. There's loads to enjoy in this title, but I think what really grabbed me first is that they added in lots of little interesting interactive details to this project. From rotating the joysticks to hotwire a car, to pressing a button to manually drag the drugs out of your bag during a big deal, this game was about putting you in the shoes of a dude that's on the wrong side of the law and having the worst day ever, but somehow it's even more fun because of it. Also, without spoiling anything, Chinatown Wars genuinely has one of the most over-the-top hardcore endings of all time. I think that it's worth buying just to see it all unfold in its beautiful, bloody style. Number 3. Beyond Good and Evil. In the current age, the publisher Ubisoft is probably best known for making some very safe projects. Stuff like big open world games with lots of checkpoints or sequels to titles they already know will do amazing. Back in the day though, they would occasionally spend tons of cash working on something a bit more experimental, and this is a game that's really a great example of something that, while not exactly recognized at the time, went on to be considered a masterpiece. The story of Beyond Good and Evil follows Jade, a young woman who's got a camera and a lot of passion. There's something going on the planet she lives on, where it seems like there's this alien creature called the Dom Z that's slowly taking over the populace. If you get abducted by the Dom Z, it either drains your life force or fills you with spores that essentially turn you into a slave. That on its own is a very bad situation to be in, especially if you're trapped on the planet. However, it gets worse. Jade begins to suspect that the government itself may be involved with the Dom Z's invasion, perhaps trying to make it look like it's a bigger threat than it is, that way they can hold power longer. There's a lot of complex social issues that are woven into the heart of this game about control and power and what it means to be an individual citizen, but on top of all that, it's also just really fun to play. Sneaking around in these hallways and seeing all these giant dramatic gauntlets. It's built in a way that I don't think I've ever seen another game try to attempt. And while that's awesome now, it's sad to see that it just sold so abysmally back in the day. Number 2. Silent Hill Shattered Memories. I've always had a soft spot for games that can shock me by taking stuff in a direction I never would have imagined, and this game really tries to start off with that by opening with a psychological exam. By answering a few simple questions, it gives you a quick profile of how you think. Silent Hill has always been a series that from the very start established itself as the king of horror by burrowing into your mind and scaring you with your own worst nightmares. And Shattered Memories takes that to the very roots, going farther than any game ever has before. Our hero Harry Mason is back in another adventure, but this time he has no way of protecting himself. As he wanders through the shadowy streets of Silent Hill looking for his daughter, he only has two options: get out alive or die trying. You see, what they tried to do with this is remove all the power that we normally think of when we game. You have no guns, you don't have any bats, you basically just have a flashlight, a phone to try and call for help, and hopefully some chance of getting out of this whole situation with your daughter still in one piece. This ebb and flow of trying to figure out solutions to problems and then running for your life is such a brilliant mix, and it really kind of keeps you stuck in this perpetual state of unease. At no point do you ever feel as if you're truly safe. Even when you're sitting in a room with no windows and you look like you're going to be 100% safe, you have no idea if you're going to get nabbed. While fans like me ate up these bizarre gameplay elements, it seems like the general audience didn't. People thought that this was just a weird remake of Silent Hill 1 and never even bothered picking it up. And now, it's become an interesting hidden gem of the Nintendo Wii. Personally, I think that if you see this game for cheap somewhere, it is absolutely something you need to grab because it is a must play. Number 1. Lost Odyssey. What I'm about to say isn't exactly groundbreaking news, but I really like Final Fantasy. I consider it one of the greatest franchises ever made, but let's face it, it's a series that kinda sticks to its own little trends. They don't always innovate in giant grand ways, and that's not exactly for lack of trying. With that being said, I think that part of the reason that Final Fantasy has been so explosively big is just because the series creator, Sakaguchi, is such a genius. His ideas constantly pushed everything forward, so when I heard that he was doing his own RPG almost completely solo with a small indie team, I had to check it out. And Lost Odyssey does not disappoint. It keeps the elements that we'd already love from Final Fantasy, like the really solid turn-based combat, but throws everything else out the window. Honestly, I need to be really vague about the story itself because it is phenomenal. Actually revealing any of the big twists could destroy the experience, but I will say this: Lost Odyssey constantly tries to pull you in different directions. This is a big place with a lot going on, so no one event ever is meant to hold your attention. There's always something going on over the next horizon, just begging for you to go see, and that is why I absolutely love it. Unfortunately, this is one of those games that it just seemed to not get any marketing, and I never understood why. I mean, this seems like something that would be very, very easy to sell. Just say, from the creator of Final Fantasy comes a new turn-based adventure on the Xbox 360, but it just didn't. There were no commercials, there was no hype, there was no articles in magazines, leaving Lost Odyssey to die sad and alone, which is a shame because this should have been an entire franchise all by itself. For its incredible combat, frankly stunning story, and the ability to keep you wanting to come back for hundreds of hours of adventure, I award this my pick as the greatest game that no one played. Did your favorite game not make the list? Got an idea for a future top 10? Leave it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Only when I started filming this did I notice that my shirt is slightly pink. I accidentally washed this with a very, very red shirt and it bled through because I'm an idiot. Oh, hey! I was just playing a little bit of Grand Theft Auto on my Darth Vader PSP. Are you curious what I'm going to come out with next? Well, if you click this button, you'll be subscribed to be the first to know. Also, if you click over here and here, you can see my latest review and my latest top 10. I promise, it was super good. Or it was really bad and I'm sure you can just make fun of me in the comments. Either way, it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for watching.